It doesn't stray from congressional intent, and nothing prohibits you from using the children's money. This judge wants the kids to go hungry so they can feed all the other adults.
I don't think anybody wants to see anybody hungry in America. The only people that I can ascertain who are being paid are members of Congress.
Yeah.
Well, I wish I had a half an hour more, but there's no way that I
Again, you are just being rude.
Trump appeals the SNAP decision order that came down in the District of Rhode Island from this guy over here. Obama-appointed judge called Judge McConnell came down and said, Trump, you have to pay all these Americans and others, everybody, all the SNAP benefits that you can. We don't really care if you have no money. You have to do it. He says, all right, before this court is the motion for enforcement of a TRO. So Trump said we'll pay some money, but they say you got to pay a bunch more. He says it is now estimated, and this is wild, that 42 million Americans, approximately 1 in 8, are on the SNAP program. 14 million children, 8 million elderly people, 1.2 million veterans. And these are going to be highly motivated voters if they're not getting their money. And who are they going to vote for? The people who are going to get them their money. A core mission of the Department of Agriculture is to ensure that children are properly nourished. But their decision not to feed hungry Americans through SNAP means I have to do something about it. So Judge McConnell is now going to solve the problem. While the President of the United States professes to a commitment of helping those it serves, the government tells a different story. Faced with the choice between advancing relief and entrenching delay, it chose the latter, an outcome that magnifies the harms. And this conduct is more than poor judgment. Again, the court can't substitute their judgment for the president's because they're not the president. It is arbitrary and capricious. Okay, so now he's saying the judgment is so bad that I can do something about it because it's now just arbitrary and capricious, which is obviously ridiculous. The government is shut down. And one cannot champion the public interest while frustrating it simultaneously, ripping on Trump. Discretion exercise needs to be done appropriately, and so these judges are nuts, man. Accordingly, intervention is not only warranted, but it's necessary to restore coherence, accountability, and fidelity to the law's intent. We talk about this all the time. Okay, you have to do what the law says. If the law says one thing, you got to do that. You can't just say, oh man, it says this, but we know that they intended for it to say something else. And so since they intended for it to say something else, we're going to do that. That's how the whole country gets perverted. And there's been a lot of that going on since the founding. Oh, the legislative history says this. And this is the living, breathing Constitution ideology. It's not textualism or originalism. What do the words say? What did the words mean when they wrote them in there? So we can gather what the meaning of this phrase is. Instead, it's opposite. It's the intent. Okay, well, maybe a bunch of people had the intention of doing this or doing that, but we can only govern ourselves based on what the law actually says. Otherwise, we're living in a clown show. Therefore, this judge says the intent is to feed these people. And so therefore, I am issuing a second order requiring the full payment of SNAP benefits to be made immediately. And I think there might be a silver lining to this. I mean, if there is no money, then maybe the president has no choice but to follow the court order and strip the money out of a bunch of other locations to fund SNAP. What can he purge and cancel and take away from that's already mandatory spending, that's already covered, that he can end to pay for this? This case has already had an unusually lengthy and factual history. 2024, Congress said $122 billion are going to feed Americans, which is insane. I mean, if it's a redistribution of wealth, if it's the government feeding people, if some Americans are paying to feed other Americans, isn't that not just basically communism or an element of it? From each according to his ability to each according to his need. We say we live in this capitalistic free market society. This is evidence of a much deeper systemic problem in our country. And I think we're feeling the effects of it. You cut off their benefits, race to the polls, Democrats have a blue sweep. Congress maintained those funding levels for a long time. Then in October, Congress shut down. The government shut down. There is no money. Then USDA issued a memo saying we can't afford to pay our SNAP benefits and said take action on this. In a separate memo, they asserted, oh, well, there are contingency funds that are not available. Then in October, a group of people sued. They said you have to give us this money. They argued that contrary to the claims that the well has run dry, there is actually other money. There's $6 billion over here in contingency funds, and there's $23 billion in Section 32 funds. They say you got to give us that money. The court held a hearing. Specifically, the court said said, we think that you're going to win. You can't cut off the funds if you've got some contingency funds, saying contingency funds can be used, saying there's going to be irreparable harm. What happens if millions of people go without food? Accordingly, the court orally ordered them to distribute the SNAP beneficiaries as soon as possible. And then following the hearing, Trump filed a motion. They said, you better put this in writing so we can comply with it. That same day, Trump also said, I don't want Americans to go hungry. I asked the court to clarify, how can we give out this money? It will be my honor to provide the funding, says Trump. Then on November 1, the court issued the legal direction. It explicitly said Trump has two options. One, you could use Section 32 funds to fund everything. And if you chose not to provide the full funding, that decision had to be made in accordance with the law. Then on November 3rd, they filed a status report. They said, okay, we can partially fund SNAP. We got $4.6 billion and we're going to send that over. That's going to be 50% of the money of the SNAP funds. However, a senior USAID official also claimed that this could take a few weeks to happen. Like, we got procedural difficulties to get that money out. According to Trump, the USDA never had to issue partial SNAP benefits before. It's all new. So it's like we got to, move money around. These difficulties, state agencies, all sorts of problems. Usually it's just like open floodgates. Here, have some more money. Now they got to cut it back a little bit. They don't know how to do it. Also in their status report, they said, we have determined we're not going to use Section 32 children funds to provide SNAP benefits for adults. Okay. We're going to keep the children money, for the children, not for people who are gobbling up SNAP benefits who don't need them. Their reasoning behind electing not to fully fund this was actually, Congress said it's only for child nutrition programs. And if we give everyone else the children's money, we're going to have a $4 billion gap for the children's fund. And Congress is not going to reappropriate that. And we feed 29 million kids. The next day, they then filed a motion. All the people who want their SNAP Doritos, they said, hey, you have to give us our money. They said they're failing to comply with our order expeditiously, and they failed to resolve any of these things. They're not doing what you ordered them to do. Within an hour of them filing their motion, Trump then posted another post. He said, SNAP benefits, which went up by billions under Crooked Joe, were done haphazardly. Trump said they were handed to anyone just for asking about them, and opposed those people just in need who need it. And so we'll give everybody benefits once they open up the government. Then they filed another notice. They said, Trump is threatening to defy you, Judge. Filed another notice. They say they're not complying at all. They're delaying our money. It's our money and we need it now. And so after careful review, we held a hearing and the judge came down with an order. He said, I gave you guys two options. You could have used any money, but now you're coming here and you're not following my order. You're not being expeditious. You're just making up procedural difficulties. You're saying it could take weeks. You said there's nothing more we can do. But they say, yes, you can. You could have begun working immediately and you didn't. And so now I'm mad about it. You overlooked the fundamental point. Compliance is achieved when Americans are fed. I'm a judge. I'm ordering you to execute the law. And instead, you've undermined the intent and the effectiveness of this order. And the court is not going to excuse this non-compliance. And so now, therefore, we order you to enforce our prior orders. There is full funding that must be had. Along with their motion, they also say, we want all of our money. In evaluating the case, they say there is going to be irreparable harm. All three factors weigh in favor of them. Everyone's going to die if they don't get government money. And what you're doing is arbitrary and capricious. So you have to act. The court finds it astounding that Trump would even choose to go down this path if they were aware of all the difficulties and delays. What then? Why would you only fund it halfway if you could fund it fully if you knew it was going to take several weeks? People are starving. An agency action that is premised on legal error is arbitrary and capricious. You are now conflating Section 32 funds for the children program with the other funds. It doesn't stray from congressional intent, and nothing prohibits you from using the children's money. This judge wants the kids to go hungry so they can feed all the other adults. In fact, USDA has even conceded that they're transferring $300 million and blah, blah, blah. And so it's arbitrary and capricious. You should be transferring the money. And one final point from the judge. Contrary to what the defendants claim, 29 million children who participate in the CNP program are not at risk of immediately going hungry. Instead, the children have plenty to eat. Instead, the 16 million of the SNAP who will go hungry need that money. So he's saying there are children in the SNAP funds. In other words, it defies belief that you would prioritize hypothetical disruption to the children under the guise of protecting the children. And so this is so implausible. This is arbitrary and capricious, and you have to now pay everything. Writing, claims are undermined by the president's own post, and so the remedy is you have to pay. They're going to win. There's going to be irreparable harm. Everyone's going to die. And so therefore, your motion to enforce is granted. Trump is ordered to make full payments of November SNAP benefits by taking money from the children's contingency funds, signed by John J. McConnell Jr. And now Trump is saying, totally ridiculous. We're obviously going to be appealing this. Here was J.D. Vance saying the same, that the judge's order is telling the president how to triage this funding problem.
Look, Jackie, it's an absurd ruling because you have a federal judge effectively telling us what we have to do in the midst of a Democrat government shutdown, which what we'd like to do is for the Democrats to open up the government. Of course, then we can fund SNAP, and we can also do a lot of other good things for the American people. But in the midst of a shutdown, we can't have a federal court telling the president how he has to triage the situation. We're trying to keep as much turned on. We're trying to keep as much going as possible. The president and the entire administration are working on that, but we're not going to do it under the orders of a federal judge. We're going to do it according to what we think we have to do to comply with the law, of course, but also to actually make the government work for people in the midst of the Democrat government shutdown.
Yeah, and the judges don't run the executive branch. And so the judge is ordering funds to be snatched from children to go to adults and some other children. So the Trump administration has filed their notice of appeal. But remember this guy, Stanley Woodward? Yeah, the same attorney who represented Walt Nauta, Trump's chief of personal assistant, really, and tried to get Stanley Woodward, Jack Smith's prosecutors, Jay Bratt, to encourage his client to flip on President Trump. Remember that scam? Stanley Woodward is back. He says, please take notice that we're appealing this decision from this judge, the written version and other documents, the one that just dropped yesterday, granting the motion to enforce this. We're taking it up to the Court of Appeals for the First Circuit. But we see that it's all about the shutdown, and the Democrats are in favor of it because they are using it as leverage. They know that if they lose their illegal alien constituency and all the trillions of dollars that go to their blue cities, their power centers are going to evaporate. And Rick Scott was out on the Senate floor explaining this has caused the longest shutdown in history, leaving millions of Americans worried about their food. Why don't they just open up the government?
Democrats have caused the longest government shutdown in our nation's history. For one reason, they hate our president. They hate him.
That too.
They don't care that their actions are stopping our troops, Capitol Police, federal law enforcement, air traffic controllers from getting their paychecks. They don't care that they're causing chaos and delays at our airports, or that 42 million people rely on SNAP benefits who can't put food on the table. Now, I think about growing up. I was blessed, had a wonderful mom. We lived in public housing. I don't know my dad. She really struggled to put food on the table. In my state of Florida and all across the country, we have people worried about putting food on the table right now. Little kids are worried about getting dinner tonight. And it's because the Democrats have decided to shut down our government. So I represent the people of Florida and Americans across this country who are sick and tired of these political games. What we ought to be doing is feed our families, pay the people that are working their tail off, and open our government.
All right, Rick Scott over there. We also had John Kennedy out today saying the same. Air traffic controllers aren't getting paid. Federal employees aren't getting paid. Practically the only people in our government who are getting paid are members of Congress. That's why John Kennedy brought 2 bills to the Senate floor to stop paying Congress during shutdowns. And many Democrat senators like Ruben Gallego in Arizona are taking pay. And Ruben said, I'm a father. I've got a mortgage to pay. I've got all these benefits that I need to pay for my family. Doesn't care about the rest of them, though.
As everyone knows, folks aren't being paid while we're in a shutdown. Our air traffic controllers are not being paid. In fact, starting tomorrow, the airlines are going to be canceling flights. Our staffs are not being paid. Federal employees are not being paid. These young men and women here, our pages, are not being paid. Our military is only being partially paid. I'm confused about SNAP payments. Some say the payments are being made. Some say they aren't. I don't know who's telling the truth, but I do know this. I don't think anybody wants to see anybody hungry in America. The only people that I can ascertain who are being paid are members of Congress.
Yeah, isn't that convenient?
Now, I'm not being paid. I said I wasn't going to take a salary during the shutdown. Some of my colleagues are, and I'm not judging anybody. The purpose of this is not to judge anybody. I'm just saying that it's time that Congress set an example. I've got 2 bills I'm going to offer up today. The first one is called the No Shutdown Paychecks to Politicians Act. This just says that while we're in a shutdown, members of Congress don't get paid, and they don't get back pay. The second bill is entitled Withhold Member Pay During Shutdowns Act. That bill says while we're in a shutdown, members of Congress don't get paid, but they will get paid. They'll get their money in arrears after we open government back up.
Both sound like better options than this one. And I remember Warren Buffett, I think at one point said, we should pass a constitutional amendment that would say if Congress doesn't pass a balanced budget every year, then they're ineligible for re-election. Something like that, right? If the government shuts down, then you're ineligible for re-election because you're idiots and you can't run the government. So you're all gone, everybody. Not a bad idea either. So here is a little bit more. We had JD, we had Ron Johnson. Man, things are getting pretty tense in the Senate. Ron Johnson digging into Blumenthal saying, will you just behave yourself? This is a Senate body. Act with some dignity.
Republicans are refusing to extend enhanced tax credits because they hate the ACA more than they care about the pain that this move will inflict on families. Thank you.
So the ranking member has been incredibly disrespectful of these hearings. This is the fourth example of this. The rules allow for one witness from the minority unless they request an extra. And I've granted that request in the past. I had no idea that he was going to add another witness via video.
Rude.
After, I didn't really time it, but 8-9 minute opening statement, then adding another witness that he could have asked ahead of time. I probably would have granted the permission. He didn't do so. He probably had 3 or 4 more pages of his opening statement. He was going to filibuster for about 30 minutes. So that's what's happening here.
Well,
I just wanted
I
to.
wish I had a half an hour more, but there's no way that I
Again, you are
did.
just being rude.
Yeah.
As you've been rude as ranking member since I took over the chair. It's unfortunate, but I appreciate if you'd stop being rude, follow the norms of this committee, and if you want an extra witness, request it beforehand.
Right.
And please keep your opening statements to a reasonable length of time.
For the love of God.
I certainly extend that courtesy by keeping my comments reasonably short. I would like if the ranking member would do the same thing.
Yeah, Blumenthal, yeah, jerk. Act like a senator for once. Golly. All right, so Trump's also commenting on the SNAP decision, and here is what the president said. We're
We have
appealing
to
this.
remain liquid. We can't give everything away based on a number. Here's an example. When I was president, the number that you're talking about was a tiny fraction of what it is now. Biden went totally crazy, gave it to anybody that would ask, gave it to people that were able-bodied, had no problem. Anybody that would ask, we get the number. And it's many times the number of people are on. This wasn't meant for that. It was meant for people that had real problems. In many cases, people that were down and out, people that could be saved. It wasn't meant for people that could do whatever they want, the people that say, well, I don't think I'll work, I'll just, collect this money. Take a look at the number, what it was during my administration and what it was during the Biden administration. It went up many, many times my first term.
Yeah, and we don't want anybody going hungry, but we also don't want 42 million people who have to get sustenance from the federal government. From our perspective, I think what has been happening my entire life is that the benefits have gone up as the exploitation has gone up. Okay, so we get exploited, our industries get hollowed out, we get invaded, home prices go up, college goes out the door. It's a big squeeze on the populace. They know they're doing it. Manufacturing's gone, all the good jobs as best they can, if they can do it, being outsourced if they can help it. And then the bad jobs, they import other people to take those too. So it's just a big problem. But then they just go, oh, here, have some benefits. Oh, here, have a stimulus. Oh, you want $600? Here you go. We're going to wreck your entire country, but here, $600. Shut up. And then you just keep that indefinitely. Yeah, okay, just shut up. How much do you need per person? $285 per person. Here you go. Get some food. But don't complain because we're giving you food. And if you want that food to continue, you're going to keep voting for us. And then generations go by and we have 42 million people who are having to be cared for because our politicians have wrecked our country. It's a real sick sign of the American body politic. We're going to keep our eye on it. Thank you for subscribing and joining as we do.